Hey, friend of the show, Mr. Brozdowski. How you doing, man? I think this is number 3. This is your third time on here.
Am I the first three-peat?
You're the first three-peat.
Let's go. That's
You
big.
are basically the Michael Jordan of the setup, man.
No, that's way too high praise.
Dude, I'm glad that we're having this conversation. I'm glad that we've been able to build enough of a friendship here that I can just call you and say, like, dude, it sounds like you know something that I don't know here. And it was about Tyler Zombro. And I'll be completely honest, Lance. When news comes out about a new Cubs special assistant pitching instructor or coach, I don't really like my antenna doesn't go up of like, oh, what's going on? I'm just kind of like, all right, it's another coach. Like it doesn't really get me going. But there's been so much buzz around this guy. So shed some light on the people. Tell us what is so special about Tyler Zombro.
Yeah, so I'll tell my origin story with Zombro. What happens? I'm on the nerd pitching space. Like if you see my socials, etc. Like I'm really digging deep on guys. I often shoot out thoughts, and you sometimes get those thoughts, especially with people who've already worked with those athletes. And oftentimes this season, Zombro and I initially connected just via DM. And I think I didn't message him, but I tweeted something out and he responded. And he's like, this actually isn't what happened. This is what happened. Or we're working on this, something along
Wow,
those lines.
Lance was called out. Lance was wrong.
I know, but that's exactly what I want because I learned in
Yeah,
those instances. I
that's
think a lot of
good.
people hesitate or just maybe look at it and scoff. But
Yeah.
I love that he reached out to me and was like, let me teach you this. And I was like, I'm all ears, man. Like this is my bread and butter here is like learning from smarter people than me. And that's what Zombro did. So that's the initial connection we had.
Cool.
We've DM'd over the course of this year and stuff. And I would say become acquaintances and stuff. But he's just a really sharp guy. And I think what happens is the reason I think this has got buzz is when you're not affiliated with a team, there's basically two places to go for what you call like third party player development, where you can get out of organization thoughts. It'd be Driveline Baseball and it's Tread Athletics. These are the two. Driveline's based out in Washington. They have a facility in Arizona and just opened one in Florida. Tread is, I believe, in North Carolina area. These are the places guys go in the off season when they want to train, not at a team facility in like in Arizona or something along those lines. And
Okay.
Zombro and Ben Brewster are like the two guys at the top of Tread in terms of the impact they've had and the athletes they've working with on the pro side specifically. So anytime you can take one of those top guys at one of those third party organizations and bring him into an org, that is, I really think, what's creating the buzz around him.
So let's dive into that for a second. What's so special? What's different about a Tread versus anything else out there that makes them, like you said, one of the top tier places to go?
I think it's just sheer quantity of information they've gathered. I know that's
Okay.
really the competitive edge that like a driveline baseball has, and I imagine it's pretty similar for a facility like Tread. Just really smart coaches, really good technology, ability to diagnose what you need to do in your delivery to get better and what you need to do in shapes to get better. Tread is really good social accounts where if you just hop over their YouTube, they have a bunch of what you'd call like pitch design sessions. One of which, if you want validation that they're legit, is with Jamison Tyone from this offseason working on a new slider. Him and Ben Brewster going through the process of it. A lot of stuff like that. And that's really what it is. It's a place to go to get outside info, get new voices on who you are as an athlete and become better.
Would you say that these treads and drive lines are actually a step ahead of major league teams in terms of available data?
I'd say some organizations, yes. I would
Okay.
say as a whole, probably no, but it's a different kind of data and information. Like they have different goals, I would say. They're working with more diverse athletes. They don't have to deal in the acquisition side of things in terms of like what's the pool of talent you have, how much money do you have to spend on guys internationally, what's your scouting like. I'd say that guys more so come to Driveline and Tread to get better. So it's a different, I would say, relationship in that respect. But I would definitely say like some of the information Driveline has, and I'm not entirely sure on the infrastructure of Tread in terms of what they have from a data processing standpoint and how many mocap labs they've done, which is like motion capture to get down a guy's specific variables in terms of how he moves and make him better and diagnose his delivery overall. I know Driveline's built out and acquired so much information there over time that's really a huge competitive advantage for them. And I would imagine it's much greater than a lot of major league organizations, just from a sheer quantity and diversity of athlete perspective.
Awesome. Okay, so first of all, that's really exciting. The next thing I want to go to, you and I have a mutual friend, and he's the assistant coach of pitching coach for the Cubs, Daniel Moscas. I was texting him about Zombro, and he was like, "This dude was really sought after, and we're really lucky to have him, and I think it's going to take us to the next level." What do you think? And I know I didn't tell you I was going to ask this question, but I'm just thinking about this right now. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think it is about the Cubs current situation, especially with the success they've had on guys like Shota Imanaga, Jamison Tyone, bringing these pitchers over, developing them. What do you think that pitch looks like to a guy like Zombro of why the Cubs over other teams?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think the Cubs have a really good brand overall, which
Yeah.
matters for a guy. Like if he wants to move from wherever he's moving to Chicago, like Chicago's a great city to live in. You get a lot of weekend nights off where you can go out because they have so many 120 games. Like it's the
Yeah.
subtle lifestyle things that I think really matter. But beyond that, this organization invests, I think, on the tech side and on the biomech side, and really believes in data-driven process around making pitchers better. We've seen that with Hottovy. You see that with Moskos coming from the Yankees organization, which is probably one of the preeminent ones in terms of really being objective in terms of their process. And I think that aligns with how Zombro thinks, and it aligns with how Tread Athletics think. And I think that synergy, for the most part, is really important. My understanding of Tyler's role is that it will be almost like a front office communicator down to not say the field level, but to the staff, to the pitching staff, in terms of Moskos and Hottovy, et cetera. So it's like a tether, and I think that's really important to kind of thread together what's happening at the top and the front office level down to Hottovy and Moskos, who are around that team every single day and such. So I think that stuff matters, especially when you lose a guy like Breslow a couple years ago. I do think to some extent, special assistant, I believe, on the pitching initiative side, Ron Otero is one of the guys up there on the decision making standpoint from the pitching side. But I think this makes really sense, a lot of sense from like a logical perspective, to bring in another pitching voice that's really well respected, very data driven, and can help supplement what they're doing on the pitching side from that acquisition standpoint, and just making guys better.
So I read an article, I think it was from Sporting News. They think this is a move for the Cubs to go out and get a Corbin Burns. I don't know if I agree with that, but I guess the way I'll rephrase that is, do you think Zombro brings in some sort of now chip to the pitch that the Cubs have for other players of like, we have Tyler Zombro, so for that reason, you should be stoked to be with the Cubs?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't really know how that connects back to Burns specifically. I don't know whether Zombro's worked with Burns at all. I would say, like, what you see a lot in baseball, and you can see this with the Cubs too. Like, I think there's probably a reason they acquired Morgan. Like that is a former Carter Hawkins guy. Like there's connections. You see these every now and then where guys follow individuals between organizations, or the leadership from a prior org gets a player that they already had, probably because they know a lot about that guy's makeup, they know who he is as a pitcher, etc. So I totally understand that. It's like you already know the guy, so you're more willing to totally bet on him. And this is going to happen. Like, you just saw this in season with Jorge Lopez having a connection with Craig Counsell. Like it's like the brotherhood of baseball. Whereas if you cross paths, you're probably going to cross paths again. So I do think perhaps it helps in some capacity down the road in terms of athletes that Tyler's already worked with. If you just hop over to his Twitter and look through who he's quote tweeted and retweeted, you could probably back into a lot of the guys he's worked with, Jason Foley, Jordan Montgomery, et cetera, like a lot of big league dudes that have had a lot of success at the major league level. So maybe down the road it helps in some capacity there. I imagine there's other guys he's worked with also that maybe isn't public, and maybe those guys are ones that the Cubs perhaps could acquire. I just can't say anything on Burns specifically. I would say that I would say no if I had to just give me a binary yes or no as to whether it helps with the Burns. Yeah, I just don't. It seems to me like Burns is going to either the Dodgers or the Orioles, just based on him quoting with the eyeball emoji of the Dodgers winning the World Series, and then the fact that he's already connected to the Orioles and in that organization. So, but maybe it helps with some of the peripheral pieces, like in Eovaldi, Kikuchi. Like I'm not entirely sure who Zombro's worked with, but it can't hurt. I'll say that.
Two questions and we'll end it here. The death ball, you love the death ball. And from what I've researched, it seems like Zombro kind of coined this term. Who would you like to see Zombro incorporate the death ball with that's currently on the Cubs roster?
Oh, that's a great question.
First of all, what is the death ball? Let everyone know what that is.
The death ball is basically this depthy slider, and we're getting into this phase of pitch design and classification such that everything is being termed and branded. Like Tread Athletics branded this thing called the kick changeup, which is something you've seen a couple guys add in the major leagues. It's just a way to get more depth on a changeup. The death ball is just a way to get more depth on a slider. It's very similar to a curveball. It fits generally with guys who are high slot, who need something that's a little harder than a steep curveball, and can use it in deep count situations. It's essentially like there's a way to get to the front of the ball a little bit easier But if you're a pronator who gets behind the ball and you add this grip, you're not creating like a ton of depth. You're creating like a short, hard breaking ball. That's the main way I would say. I'd encourage you to check out the Tread Athletics article
And Ben Brown
video where they
is
talk about this.
one of the guys that throws that. So if you wanted to see what that looks like, just go watch the highlights. Yeah.
And it's one of those things too. It's like, the way I understand it is a lot of the death balls that guys get are just, you naturally move in a way that suggests you should throw this pitch. It's not just like breathing just to steal a death ball. It's like, oh, he's not a guy that like moves in the way that makes this pitch work. But Ben Brown's like a steep, high release, not totally carry on his fastball, like big downhill plane. Those guys work really well in terms of adding this kind of depth slider to what you call the death ball.
Cool. So which guy? Who would you like to see incorporated?
I skirted your question. I don't know if I have it off the top of my head. That would be a great one. You know the thing I want to say though? I want Ben Brown to add some kind of split. So I don't know. I'm not going to give you your answer there, but I'm going to give you a similar answer, which is like give me a split for Ben Brown. I love that idea.
Well, yeah, you love the splitter these days too. So
for sure.
All right, so let's fast forward to August or September, and what's the mark that you think you would be able to say by that time, like, oh, okay, that the Cubs have really taken on the Zombro approach, or Zombro's really made an impact because I can point to either this data or this kind of result that I'm seeing on this staff that seems like it's being really influenced by a Zombro type of approach?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it might be hard sometimes to like get a very specific instance, but I do think the way you'll get it is through either what I just said, the death ball or the kick changeup, which are two kind of pitches that Tread has coined, and I know Zombro's talked to some guys. So we'll get those stories publicly. I don't think it's gonna be something that's like, oh, this guy's throwing a nasty changeup all of a sudden. What is the grip? Then you see the grip, and it's like, oh yeah, Zombro and some of the pitching staff decided to go with this grip on this guy, and it was from Tread Athletics. So I would say like, major league guys making very sharp adjustments, adding a new pitch, getting better versus a specific handedness or something along those lines. Like that will be the Zombro imprint. I don't think it'll be as broad as like now everybody in the minor leagues is throwing harder and it's because of Zombro. I think it's more going to be, this guy had a trouble versus left-handed hitters and we gave him this new pitch and drop the usage here and here, and therefore he's now better. And it's like, then you look at the reporting from whoever reports on it, and it's like, oh, Zombro had a piece of that action in terms of suggesting it or helping implement it, etc. So I think it's more like helping specific guys get better.
When you talk about just even the lefty thing, the first two guys that come to mind are Tyone and Hayden Wesneski. Like,
yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah,
Tyone working on a second slider already, as I mentioned earlier in that Tread video. So it's a thought for him to figure out. I think that's probably a pitch he'd use, maybe away from righties and down into lefties too. So I could totally see that working out.
Awesome. Okay. Anything else you want to say about Zombro?
He's a good dude. I encourage you to check out the Jeff Passan piece about some of his backstory. He had a kind of a crazy incident at AAA. He ended up never making it to the majors, but just crazy resilience from him. He's a great guy. Lucky
to be alive is what it seems like. For sure. I'll put that link down in the description, guys. Lance, thank you so much, bro. I appreciate you jumping on, and let's hope we see the Zombro effect in 2025.
I would love it.